Good morning. This is a demo of multi-sheet looping in Winshuttle Studio for Transaction. My name is Jeff Dunn. A little bit of background, I joined ClearProcess in August of last year. I've been using SAP though for about 13 years and Winshuttle Studio scripts for about 8 years, most of that with data quality management and conversion projects. Everyone should be in listen-only mode. This is a pre-recorded session, so unfortunately there won't be any ability to respond to your questions by chat, but we welcome those questions or comments, which you can send to our email address there, info@clearprocesssolutions.com. So again, the topic is multi-sheet looping. We're going to look a little bit at why you would use that versus a single data tab, which is the default method when you create a loop. We're going to look at how you map those fields using the multi-sheets. Also, you may have more than one, you need to have a join field between the two tables, and that join field may be more than one column, more than one field. So we'll look at that a little bit. And then we'll talk about log messages and how they're different between the two methods. So single sheet loop. So a loop is anything where you have header and detail data, like creating a sales order with multiple items, a purchase order with multiple items, where you have materials extended to different storage locations or plants. So anything that you use the loop function in Studio with. The default method is single sheet, where you have a column, in this case column A, that has a indicator for header and an indicator for detail. The defaults are H and D. So you have an H row. We're looking at in the graphic here, that's row 2. And the header fields, columns B through D, are the only fields that are the only data that will be on that row. For the detail lines, they would start on the next row, row 3, the row that was flagged as a D or detail column. And because of that stagger, where the detail data is shifted one row down, that may require extra manipulation of data to get into that format. So that's where multi-sheet loops can help. In this case, you have two sheets. The first sheet is the header, sheet 1 in this case, and there's a common index field between the two tables that in our case is column A. In both places it doesn't have to be. And so that has to be a value that joins the two records, or two sets of records. You can have multiple fields there. You could have a custom, and we'll look at that in a second, but you could have a custom identification number that you assign to that record. In our example, we're going to use a mapped field for the index field also, but you don't have to do that. So as you see in sheet 2 on the right, it's flatter. There's no blank rows in the detail. So we're going to look at a little demo. Okay, so this is an XK02 or change vendor script, and what it's doing is, for a specified vendor, it is adding contacts in the loop. So first name and last name, and you can see in the data that we have a vendor account number, So this is the header data on the header line, and then you have first name and last name in the detail rows for that vendor. And again, you have a blank line on the detail side because of the stagger that's required, where you start with the D. So we're going to look at the log messages in a second, but so what we want to do is switch this to a multi-header or a multi-sheet with header and detail tabs. So let's look at the, so I clicked on the loop while link at the top of the loop. That takes you to the loop settings. By default, it starts with column A, but you can change any of these things. So this is the single sheet loop, and this is how you would change to a multi-sheet. But before, so again, this is the kind of the layout of the data, and then on the multiple sheet, you would have two different tabs. So we need to define a sheet and the column that has the common key between the two sets of data. So let's switch over to Excel, to the data file. So this is our single data again. Multi-header, so in order to get this data into the other format, we take the headers. We have one row per header in the header data, and we have one row per detail here with the reference for the common key, which in this case is our vendor account number. So for this vendor account 1000, we have 5 detail lines, and if you compare that to here, we have 1000, and then we had 5 lines below the header line. So as far as the log message, you'll get a log message on the header line. That's what we'll map it to. The detail, I'll talk about this in a second, but this is not mapped. Okay, so we're going to map the header and the 2 detail fields again and define the loop. So let's go back to Studio. So we have multiple sheet selected. This is where you define which sheet is the header, and we called our header sheet multi-header, so it's whatever the name of the sheet is. We have our vendor account number, which is the unique key in column A. We have the detail sheet is called multi-detail, and again, that's in column A. So now we need to remap these fields because right now they're not specifying which sheet they're on. So it's mapped the same way. You just picked your sheet, in this case, multi-header, and we're going to map the vendor account to here. So instead of column B, now it's multi-header column A. Then inside the loop, we're going to map the 2 detail fields. First name, name 1. That's column B and C. And the last thing is the log message. So the log message was column E on the single tab. We're going to switch back to header and map that here. So that's now on multi-header column B. So that's it. So it's pretty similar as far as the mapping is concerned. You just need to get your data in the right format. So that's that is all you would have to do there. So let's look at the log messages a little bit. So we talked about one reason you would do this is to not have to provide these blank lines on the header line as far as the detail data. But as far as the log messages, so if you have a lot of data, like thousands of records, and you might have, in this case, we have an error. You might have a dozen or 20 different error messages. This error is specific to the vendor number, so you would see a different error message every time. But let's say you wanted to see what vendors had not been created, you could put a filter on your log column, and if it's not a header detail type situation, you could filter on color or filter on the text. But what we have here is we have this extra, if it's, let's get back here. We have the item row D on starting on the first detail line, and the message that whether it's success or an error message is on the header line and the last detail line. So in between it says item row D. If you were to filter on this specific message that the vendor has not been created, if you have multiple vendors, you could just type part of the string and it would automatically check those. If you check that, you see that the item row D went away, so you don't get to see the detail in between unless you just filtered by color, and then you're seeing all the error messages if there were multiple. So one thing I like about this multi-sheet method is that you have, it's a one-to-one here. You have a header with the single error message that was on that header, and then what we can do here is have a lookup for, we have multiple 1007 vendor accounts, and you could filter in the detail section on that message. So has not been created. You can see all four detail lines there. Where this really comes in handy is in a big load, like for example, bill of material. If you're doing thousands or tens of thousands of records, it's very hard to see the detail in between unless you do some fancy formulas off to the side to be able to filter like that. So that's another benefit in addition to the flatter format. So one other, I don't have a script here, but I wanted to show you another example of if you have multiple columns that make up your key. So in this case, let's say we want to change a PO item delivery schedule. So you have multiple delivery lines once you've selected the PO number and the item that you want to assign those quantities and delivery dates to. So what we have here is the field that's used in the loop settings screen is this join column, and that can be either a unique number, like I mentioned earlier, or in this case, I mean, you could assign a number, just an incremental number. In this case, we can use a concatenate function, or I just used ampersand to add these strings together. So we're adding together the PO number and the item number. This is what's considered the header tab. And then if you go to the detail tab, you're doing the same thing. So we're saying for item number 10, we have 3 different delivery schedules, 3 different dates and quantities. So you just have to have that unique key that, again, is common between the 2 tables. So you could do this as many times as you wanted. If you had something with sales org and distribution channel and division, you could combine all those things together with a customer number or something to come up with a unique key. So one other thing I want to show you is a alternate method to kind of flatten the data a little bit, just so you have that in your back pocket. Let me get to that. Okay, so let's see if we can do this. So another option is you can run your first detail line outside the loop or just before the loop. And this is a recommendation that you might have seen before. So basically you're going to enter your header data, then you're going to enter your first detail line, and then you're going to loop through the remaining detail lines. And what that does is it allows you to start your detail on the header line. So in this case, C2, we can move our data up. So let me see if I can do that. Okay, so the way you do that, you select your rows. You want to select inside the loop. So don't start selecting the first row inside the loop and stop at the last row before the end of the loop. And then paste it before your loop. Right click, paste, insert before. Okay, so what we have is we have two screens here that run. This is a page down command, so it goes into the list of contacts, pages down to get a blank line, enters the first name and name. And then we don't need that blank line anymore. So it's the same as what's inside the loop. It's mapped to the same columns. So with the way now that you could do that data is on the single tab. Oh, still have this filtered. You could have your data start here, and then you wouldn't have this line or this line. So it in effect allows you to create that flat format. You still might have an issue with the item row D, and the other issue that you might have is sometimes your loop can be a bunch of screens, and so it makes it very complicated to do this extra set of fields, and then you'd have to maintain both sets of screens. So that's just another option that you can do if it's not a real not a lot of mapped fields there. Then that gives you another option. So I think that will do it. So again, if you have any questions or if you have comments about this presentation, feel free to email us at info@clearprocesssolutions. You can learn more about CPS on our website, clearprocesssolutions.com. Thank you for attending and have a great day.